The morning sun spilled across the sidewalk cafes of Coral Gables, casting long golden streaks over polished glass tables. I had agreed to meet Clara for coffee, though I already sensed the air would be heavy with her impatience. She ordered her oat milk latte without hesitation, her nails tapping against her phone screen while she scrolled. I, wanting to contribute anything, offered to pay for the small coffee I ordered. When the server slid the card reader toward me, I slipped my bank card inside, a faint smile tugging at my lips. The beeping pause that followed felt longer than it should have. Then the words appeared. Clear and cruel declined. The server's eyes flicked toward me, apologetic. But before I could gather my voice, Clara leaned forward and let out a laugh that cut through the cafe. "Mom, stop draining my money," she said loudly, loud enough for the couple at the next table to glance up. Eyebrows raised. My cheeks burned hot. I wanted to explain that the money had been mine long before Clara learned to walk, that her life of luxury was paved by sacrifices she never saw, but the words stuck in my throat. She was already turning back to her phone, sipping her latte like nothing had happened. As I lowered my gaze to the cup of water the server placed before me out of pity, I caught sight of a familiar figure across the cafe, Mr. Ellsworth. My old neighbor from the house I had once cherished in Orlando stood quietly near the entrance, cane in hand. His eyes met mine, steady and knowing. He had seen everything. He didn't step forward or speak. He simply offered a small nod, a gesture of recognition that said more than words. I straightened my back, forcing a smile onto my lips, though my chest felt hollow. Clara never noticed. She was too busy snapping a photo of her coffee to post online. I sipped the water, its chill sinking into me, and realized something had cracked inside me, not loudly, not visibly, but deeply enough to never mend the same way again. I walked out of that cafe with my daughter at my side, and the echo of Mr. Ellsworth's silent nod in my mind, already sensing that the past I had carried so patiently was about to resurface. I remember the nights when the apartment was dark, except for the soft hum of the heater and the faint glow of my sewing lamp. I would be hunched over, mending clothes, packaging jewelry, or tallying accounts from the small boutique job I had taken after the store closed. Clara, asleep in her little bed, would stir occasionally, and I would pause to watch her, heart full of hope and exhaustion all at once. After my husband passed, it was just the two of us. I sold jewelry I had inherited, worked double shifts at the diner, and even delivered newspapers before dawn. Every penny I earned was meant to keep us afloat, to give Clara the childhood I never had a chance to fully provide her. I remember him saying, years ago, before illness stole him from us, "This money is for your freedom, not your chains. Use it wisely, Marcella." Those words became a mantra I carried silently. Clara as a child was sweet and promising. She would press her tiny hand into mine and whisper, "I'll take care of you. Mom, I promise." I believed her, trusting in the innocence of youth and the bond we shared. But somewhere along the way, the closeness faded. Her ambition grew into entitlement, and my sacrifices became invisible, like dust settling in the corners of a room no one notices. I watched her move through the world with ease, attending parties I could never afford, flashing her designer bag in the offices I had scrubbed floors to enter, and I realized, painfully, that I had been erased from her story. The money I had painstakingly saved, the nights I had sacrificed sleep and warmth, the dreams I had shelved, all of it became invisible under her success and self-importance. Sitting alone in the quiet of my living room that evening, the echoes of my past life surrounded me. Every coin counted, every shift endured, Every sleepless night, all had led to this moment. And yet I had not prepared for the sting of invisibility. I closed my eyes and felt the weight of those years settle over me, a mixture of pride and sorrow. Somehow, despite the exhaustion, I also felt a flicker of something else, an ember of strength I had almost forgotten, waiting to ignite. The next morning, I found myself walking toward the drawers where old documents rested, the memory of Clara's laughter in the cafe still echoing, and a quiet resolve began to take shape. Returning to the Miami condo, I felt the chill of alien surroundings press against me. The space was immaculate, every surface gleaming, every corner curated, as if it belonged to someone else entirely. Designer vases, expensive sculptures, and furniture that gleamed under soft overhead lights. Clara's touch was everywhere. I had once hoped to infuse this place with warmth, my husband's memory, my own small touches, but now it felt more like a showroom than a home. Clara flitted about as if she owned the world, recounting her latest acquisitions with animated gestures and a laugh that filled every room. I booked the Napa trip. "Mom," she said, tossing her hair back, "and I'm thinking of leasing the new Jaguar. I'll take care of everything. Don't worry." She spoke as if the condo, the fortune, even my very presence were hers to command. I sank into the living room chair, watching the way she moved, the way her voice carried. My own life seemed like a shadow in comparison. Quiet evenings alone, the gentle ache of missing my husband, the photographs I was never allowed to hang. Even the small painting I had completed last year had been relegated to a corner, unseen, unnoticed. Every luxury Clara flaunted felt like a reminder of how far my sacrifices had been ignored. I whispered to the empty room. Almost to myself, I was never your burden. Clara, you were mine. The words were heavy with years of endurance, with love that had gone unrecognized, with the sorrow of watching the child I had raised become a stranger to the values I had instilled. As I rose to walk past the sleek counters and pristine floors, I realized how long I had allowed myself to remain silent. My silence had been a shield, yes, but it had also become a cage, letting cruelty and entitlement take root. And yet, beneath the weight of that realization, I felt the stirrings of something new, an ember of determination, fragile but alive, that whispered of reclaiming control. I moved toward the bedroom, where the quiet hum of the air conditioner filled the space. Somewhere in these walls lay the documents, the keys to undoing the illusion of Clara's dominion, and I knew, with a calm certainty, that the moment to act was approaching. The apartment was quiet, a stillness that felt heavier than any noise I had endured earlier that day. I could hear the faint hum of the refrigerator, the soft ticking of a clock somewhere in the hall, and the distant traffic beyond the windows. Sleep had abandoned me, and I found myself drawn to the bedroom drawers I had not opened in years. I slid one open, fingers brushing against papers I had long ignored, bills, letters, old receipts, but then, tucked in a corner, I found what I had almost forgotten, a folder stamped with the bank's seal, marked with my initials in neat, bold lettering. My heart quickened. I opened it carefully, unfolding documents that seemed almost ceremonial in their authority. The handwriting, crisp and clear, revealed a truth I had somehow missed in all the years of domestic chaos and quiet compliance. I was the primary account holder. Clara had access? Yes, but only as a secondary user. The papers detailed every clause, every signature, explicit instructions that I could revoke her access at any moment, with no obstacle, no appeal, no delay. The realization hit me like a jolt of electricity. All these years, I had believed myself powerless, a passive participant in a game controlled entirely by my daughter. And yet, The power had been in my hands the whole time, hidden in plain sight, waiting for me to notice. I sank onto the bed, clutching the folder to my chest. The magnitude of the moment made the room seem smaller, the walls pressing in with years of suppressed frustration and unspoken anger. I could feel the weight of every humiliating glance, every dismissive remark, every act of entitlement, bending the air around me. And beneath it all, a new clarity emerged, a cold, determined resolve. For the first time in decades, I understood that my silence, my patience, had not been weakness. It had been preparation. And now, with the folder open before me, I could see a path forward. The cage that had held me for so long was not locked. I had simply never realized the key had been mine all along. I placed the documents carefully on the nightstand, my fingers lingering on the edges. Tomorrow, everything would change, and I would move with quiet, unshakable purpose toward reclaiming what was always mine. Morning light filtered through the blinds, painting stripes across the hardwood floor. I held the folder from last night close to my chest, tracing the embossed bank seal with a fingertip. My heart was steady now, calm in a way it hadn't been for decades. This was the moment I had been waiting for, the first step toward reclaiming the life that had been quietly slipping from me. I picked up the phone and dialed the private banker's direct line, a number I had memorized the night before. When the line clicked, I spoke clearly, deliberately, every word carrying the weight of a woman who had endured too long. This is Marcella Rowan. Effective immediately. Revoke all third-party access to my accounts. There was a pause, and then a quiet, professional voice on the other end responded. Yes. Mrs. Rowan, you are the sole owner. Clara Rowan Bennett is no longer authorized on any of your accounts. Is there anything else I can assist you with? I felt a rush of calm power pulse through me, a sensation I had not known since the days I had balanced double shifts and sleepless nights. The words resonated like a chime, echoing in a long, empty hall. This was mine, always had been. And finally, the truth had been acknowledged by the institutions that mattered. I set the phone down, letting the silence fill the kitchen. I poured a cup of tea, watching the steam curl in lazy spirals, imagining Clara standing at an ATM, confident and arrogant, only to have the machine reject her, her confusion, the flush of panic that would rise, the indignation she would feel. Every imagined detail felt like a small, silent victory. The tea warmed my hands, anchoring me in the present. I realized that my power had always existed, quietly, patiently, like a river flowing beneath ice. Now the ice had cracked. As I sipped, I planned my next steps. Watch, wait, and act with precision. The dominoes were set, and I could see the first tipping point clearly on the horizon. Tomorrow, Clara would encounter the truth in a way she could not ignore, and I would be ready. Clara breezed into the condo that evening, her phone pressed to her ear, laughter sharp and confident. She dropped her handbag on the counter and rattled off her plans as if she were dictating to an assistant. I've already spoken with the dealership about the Jaguar lease. Napa is booked for next month. Oh, and I've been looking into putting the Orlando property on the market, prime time to sell, the Orlando property. My childhood home. My parents' hands had built that modest house, and every memory of their labor lived in its walls. I froze where I stood, teacup trembling slightly in my hand. Clara ended her call and noticed me watching. Don't look so surprised. Mom, that old place is just sitting there, dead weight. I'll handle the paperwork. She smiled as though she were doing me a favor. Later, when she left her purse on the sofa and disappeared into her room, I saw a folded document sticking out from a folder. Curiosity pushed me closer. I eased it free, my breath catching when I recognized my name scrawled at the bottom in shaky, unfamiliar loops. My signature, or rather, Clara's attempt at it. The date on the page was weeks old. For a moment, heat surged through me. A fury so sharp it made my vision blur. She had tried to take even that, the home where my father planted roses, where my mother baked bread. She was willing to erase every trace of me for another taste of luxury. I replaced the paper exactly as I found it and steadied myself. Silence was no longer weakness. It was strategy. I would let her believe she held the strings while I gathered proof. Each document, another stone stacked against her. That night, lying in bed, I understood that Clara's greed had no boundaries. And soon, she would discover mine had limits no longer. Saturday morning, Clara announced, with her usual flourish, that she was heading out for a big weekend. She swept past me in her designer dress, heels clacking against the tile, her perfume lingering long after the door shut. I waited a few minutes, then slipped out myself, carrying only my small purse. I chose a corner seat in a cafe across from the bank, the same one where I had quietly moved my steps into place. By chance, or perhaps providence, Mr. Ellsworth was there too, seated by the window with a newspaper. When our eyes met, he offered the same quiet nod he had given me at the cafe weeks ago, a reminder that dignity could be witnessed even in silence. Through the glass, I watched Clara strut to the ATM, phone in one hand, card in the other. She slid it into the machine with the confidence of someone who believed the world bent to her. Seconds later, the machine spat it back. She frowned, tried again, more forceful this time, rejected once more. I could almost hear her curse from across the street as she jabbed at her phone. Dialing the bank, she pressed the speaker button, her voice rising. "This is Clara Rowan Bennett. I'm at your ATM, and it keeps rejecting my card. Fix this immediately." The banker's voice was calm, professional. "I'm sorry, Rowan Bennett, but your access has been revoked. Only Mrs. Marcella Rowan retains full control of these accounts." The words carried across the sidewalk like a verdict. Clara's face drained of color, her bravado collapsing in an instant. The banker added, without hesitation, "And for clarity, the funds originate solely from the trust of the late Mr. E. Rowan. Mrs. Rowan is, and always has been, the sole owner." Clara staggered, her phone slipping from her grasp. She swayed, then crumpled onto the pavement, gasps from bystanders rippling around her. Mr. Ellsworth lowered his newspaper, his gaze steady on me. Knowing, I lifted my cup of coffee, the bitter warmth grounding me, and turned back toward the street where my daughter lay in the wreckage of her illusions. In the days that followed, Clara shut herself away in her room. The condo, once full of her laughter and constant calls, grew silent except for the phone that never stopped ringing. Creditors left voicemails thick with threats. A dealership clerk demanded payments on the car she had flaunted only weeks before. Even her so-called friends, the ones who used to flood our doorway with their designer handbags and hollow compliments, stopped calling altogether. I moved quietly through it all, watching her unravel without a word of scorn. There was no need for cruelty. The world had already delivered the truth she had tried so hard to ignore. My focus shifted to myself for the first time in years. At the bank, I withdrew enough to secure what I knew would be my next chapter. Not piles of cash or indulgences, just what I needed to step forward with independence. I felt a calm resolve as the teller counted out crisp bills, each one a reminder that I was no longer tethered by fear or Clara's shadow. Back at the condo, I began to pack. I didn't touch the things Clara had filled the rooms with: the sculptures, the glass vases, the art bought more for price tags than beauty. Instead, I folded my old sweaters into a suitcase, slipped photo albums between them, and wrapped a single plant in newspaper, the one that had grown from a cutting my late husband once tended in his garden. Its leaves were worn, but alive, just like me. I moved slowly, savoring the act of choosing what to take. With every item placed in my bag, I felt lighter, as though I were peeling away years of silence and compromise. Clara never emerged, never asked where I was going. She was too busy facing a storm of her own making. I closed the suitcase, set it by the door, and looked around one last time. The condo had never been mine. Not really. Now it was nothing more than a shell, a place I was ready to leave behind. My hand lingered on the doorknob, steady and sure, as I prepared to step into the life waiting for me. Clara finally emerged from her self-imposed exile one evening, her eyes red, her voice trembling. "Mom, please," she said, clutching the doorframe as if it could steady her. I didn't mean it. I was stressed. Just give me another chance. We can start over. Her words fell flat. They were not apologies, but bargains, spoken only because her world had collapsed. I listened without anger, but I felt no pull to forgive. My silence was answer enough. She wept, but I could not lift her from a pit she had dug so deeply. Days later, the papers were signed and the Miami condo was no longer mine. I felt no regret. The sale closed a chapter that had never belonged to me. And with part of the proceeds, I arranged something Clara would never imagine: a scholarship fund for widows who, like me, had sacrificed in silence. It bore no grand announcement, no plaque with my name, just quiet aid for those who needed it most. When Mr. Ellsworth stopped by to see me before I left, he carried a bag of oranges from his garden. He set it on my counter and said simply, "Your dignity inspired more than you know." His words sank deeper than any applause could. Clara remained adrift, pacing rooms that were no longer hers, realizing too late that she had lost not only money, but the trust and respect that once bound us. She looked at me sometimes with hollow eyes, as if searching for the mother she had ignored. But that version of me was gone. I gathered my small suitcase and the plant I had chosen to carry forward, ready to leave the city behind for good. The lake house near Gainesville was modest, its white shutters peeling slightly and its wooden porch creaking beneath my steps. Yet to me, it felt like a sanctuary. The first evening I moved in, I placed my husband's photograph on the mantel, his kind eyes watching over the room that smelled faintly of pine and fresh paint. For the first time in years, I breathed without the weight of someone else's expectations pressing on my chest. Out back, the soil was soft and ready. I knelt with the roses I had carried from my childhood home, cuttings carefully wrapped in damp cloth for the journey. As I pressed their roots into the earth, I felt as though I were stitching the past into the present, weaving memory into new life. The air was heavy with the scent of water and grass, and with each shovel of dirt, I laid claim not only to the garden, but to myself. Evenings passed in quiet rhythm tea on the porch, the ripple of the lake at dusk, and the gentle hum of cicadas. There was no grandeur here, no glittering sculptures or imported furniture, only peace and the steady return of my own voice. One night, as the roses bent slightly in the breeze, I stood before them and whispered the truth I had carried for decades. My true inheritance wasn't money, but the courage to claim my life back. My words drifted across the water, soft but unshakable. I bent closer to the blooms, their petals catching the moonlight, and let the final words escape in a voice steady with release. I was never your burden, Clara. You were mine, and I've finally set it down.